everyone, welcome to the HeyHannah Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Maya Fields, but to my friends and those who know me well, I'm just Maya. I'm a higher education administrator, a mother, and a wife of 14 amazing years. But above all, I'm a Christ follower. This podcast is a special platform created to honor the memory of my beloved daughter, Hannah. It's here that I have the chance to have the conversations that I never got to have with her, to share the wisdom and love I wish I could have passed on. It's a reminder to cherish the precious moments we're given and a testament to the power of healing, hope, and personal growth. If you're someone who's seeking personal growth, inspiration, and practical advice to build a solid foundation for a successful and fulfilling life, this is the place for you. Join me as we honor Hannah's memory together. Laugh, cry, and learn. Get ready for a podcast that is so much more than you could ever imagine. The HeyHannah Podcast. Healing hearts, one conversation at a time. Welcome to another episode of the HeyHannah Podcast. We are so glad that you are joining us again today. This is going to be an exciting episode, especially if you have newborns. Right now, you're not getting any sleep and you definitely want some sleep. We have sleep consultant here with us today, Stephanie Hewitt. Not only does she work with newborns, but she works with individuals across the spectrum. And she's going to tell us about sleep hygiene, parent coaching, and just the different services that she offers. It's all kinds of revolutionary resources in parenting these days. And I am definitely thankful for that. So it's great to always broaden our perspective and learn a little bit more about what type of resources are out there to help us as parents. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about you and how you got into being a sleep consultant?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I have been a sleep consultant, parent coach for almost 2 years, and I have 4 children. And we have quite an age span in our family. My oldest will be 18 next month, and my youngest is 5. So we're doing a lot of parenting. Because my oldest is 18, nobody was talking about sleep consulting or sleep hygiene back then. I brought her home from the hospital and I was like, when should we get some sleep? Like, when does this stop? And the doctor was like, she'll grow out of it. This is really normal. And I was like, okay. And she was like 9 months old and we were still waking up in the middle of the night to feed her. And I remember talking to a friend of mine and she was like, you don't have to do that anymore. And I was like, but how do I not? Like, what do you even do?
Yeah.
And it was this huge question that nobody had a satisfactory answer to. So we kind of messed our way through that. And then I had my son and he did things completely different. And he's the only one of my kids that climbed out of his crib. And I was like, what are you doing? And then we had our third child and she had sleep trouble as a toddler. Great sleeper as a baby. As soon as we took her out of the crib and put her in the toddler bed, she was up and down 6 times a night, coming in my room. Hi. And I was like, oh no, girl. Oh no. And we didn't sleep for years trying to figure out, why won't you stay in your bed? Do you have insomnia? Is that a thing with kids? Do you have allergy problems? We took her to a pediatrician, an allergist. We considered a sleep study because she would not stay asleep.
Yeah.
Now I know exactly how I could have helped her. But 12 years ago, nobody was talking about it. So then when we had our 4th one, I was like nervous because we were finally in a good place and we did okay. Like, I'm a really pretty good newborn mom. I can manage my way through that. But then she got sick. She had RSV and pneumonia when she was about 6 months old. And you just go into survival mode when your kids are sick, right? And you just do what needs to be done. And we weren't getting any sleep because I was having to hold her upright and we were doing breathing treatments and all the things. But then she was well, and like now she's still not sleeping. And I told my husband, I'm like, I've got to get somebody to help me. I've got these 3 older kids. I've got this infant. I'm not doing this. And the internet sent me, the internet algorithm sent me a sleep consultant. And it just changed my life. I was like, this is incredible. Everybody needs to know about this.
For
It's awesome.
sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like, my boys are 4 and 6. I don't even really remember hearing anything about a sleep consultant. Yet I thought to myself, like, it would be great if, you all would sleep. And, that's a realistic thing when people talk about, do we have more children? It's like, oh, do I want to go back through the sleepless night phase? And then we don't even talk about the lack of sleep as an adult on your health. Like, that's one of the things that you go to the doctor, you're having a health issue. It's like kind of one of the reoccurring things, like sleep and weight loss is always at the top.
Yep.
So it's affecting all the areas, yet we have not figured out that a sleep consultant is so necessary. So you are brightening the horizon here for sure.
I hope so.
So you work with infants and toddlers with sleeping. So we'll start with the infant stage because that's probably the most notorious when you think about lack of sleep. When you go into a new family, they're tired and they're just reaching out to you like, hey, what do we do? How do you guide the conversation to get them on the right track to move forward with some type of peace in their home?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Most often with newborns, I'm actually working with 3 newborn families right now that I get them. I don't like to start until they're at least 2 or 3 weeks old. I want milk supply to come in, bottle feeding to be established, grandma to go home, mom's physical recovery to be well underway. And then we can start talking about sleep hygiene. With newborns, the most common concern from parents is as soon as I lay them down, they wake up. Like during, I have to hold my baby all day long.
Yeah. So wait, you're saying at 3 weeks, so we can do something about sleep at 3 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking this is like down the road. Okay.
No, we can get started right out the gate. So there's a big concern then, and there's kind of a stigma around sleep training, that, we're going to train my baby and they have to cry a lot and it's ugly and it's messy. And do you know what? Sometimes it feels messy. With a newborn, it's different. I come at this from a completely different perspective. When I work with a newborn family, we're working together for a minimum of a month because it is slow. We move really nice and slow. We keep mom or dad right by the bed, the bassinet or crib. And I always encourage them to have baby in the room with them. And we talk about how we can lay the baby down. We're setting up routines. We're talking about feeds. We eat and then we play and then we sleep. We talk about how a newborn needs to be asleep every 45 minutes because that avoids them being overtired. And an overtired baby now looks like a colicky baby. And we also talk about overfeeding because most often when the baby's crying, somebody goes, here, feed the baby. Well, if you're feeding the baby every 45 minutes instead of trying to get them to sleep every 45 minutes, now we have reflux and spit up and tummy upset and poop problems. And so we talk a lot about our schedule. We talk about how to be flexible with our schedule because they're a human being and you're a human being and every day is going to look a little bit different. And that's okay. But it is possible to help that baby be able to sleep in their space. We talk about swaddling and all the things so that as they move down the road, that baby just kind of goes, oh, this is how we do it. Okay.
Nice. So routine, I hear you saying that a lot, like it's a big part. And I feel like that's a lot of the case with children just in general, especially through the toddler stage, is setting up a routine. So it kind of made me think though, how often do you run into setbacks because parents don't keep the routine once you leave?
Yeah. I did have one sweet family. Yes, I did have one sweet family. It happens especially when people go out of town.
Yeah.
People go out of town and then they come back and they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, no, you're fine. Just get back to normal. It takes time to readjust. Expectations are a little off. Just reset. You're okay. Go back to normal. But the routine can be hard for parents because as adults, we are used to being able to just make adjustments as things pop up. Kids don't do that as well all the time. They want to know what's expected of them, and their bodies need more sleep. They need more regularity. And so keeping a routine with your kids during the day, even as small children, is really, really helpful for behavior. It's helpful for sleep. It's helpful for food. It's helpful when you start potty training. So kids just know what to expect because they have such little control over anything that happens in their lives that when you have kind of a daily structure, they know, oh, I get to get up and then I have breakfast and then we go to the park and then I go to school and then we, they know what's coming and it's easier.
Okay. Got it. So we roll from infants into the toddler phase. And I guess I'm going to jump to the middle here because this is my question. I feel like this comes up a lot with toddlers. What is your recommendation on when do naps drop off? Do you have like a certain place where you're saying like, this is around where you want to start dropping the nap? Because I feel like it's all over the spectrum and parents just don't know. Like you hear everything from everywhere and then you just kind of wing it.
Yes. So most often kids are ready to drop their nap between ages 3 and 4.
Okay.
Every so often you'll get a kid. I had a couple of kids that couldn't nap anymore regularly after age 2.5. What you start noticing is having trouble falling asleep at bedtime. So if they had a nap that day and you normally go to bed at 7:30, but now it's 8 o'clock, 8:15, and they're still not able to fall asleep. It's probably because they didn't have enough sleep pressure to be able to fall asleep at bedtime. Okay. So our brain produces chemicals, melatonin and serotonin, to help us fall asleep at night. We call it sleep pressure. Each age has a wake window of the appropriate sleep pressure that has to build up before they're able to fall asleep. So if you're noticing that your toddler is having trouble falling asleep at night, it may be the nap. The other thing that happens is they start fighting the nap. Normally we nap from 12 to 2, but now it's like almost 1 o'clock and you're still not asleep. Well, they don't have enough sleep pressure. The dropping the nap is a tricky thing because when you drop the nap, it can take weeks for their body clock to adjust to it. Okay. So you may have like 3 days a week where they fall asleep for a nap, but they're not going to nap every single day while their body gets used to less sleep during the day. The other thing that parents notice is by 5 o'clock, everybody's a hot mess.
Yeah.
On a no nap day at 5 o'clock, and we're like losing our minds. And everybody's just really tired. It's hard to adjust to not having a nap. So I always suggest just bump bedtime up half an hour for the next couple of weeks while bodies adjust, and just be patient. It's hard to drop that last nap.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate to like the nap at one point became much more of a struggle than it was like a win. And it's kind of like, okay, we got to the point where we're having to lay down with them for an hour or two. And it's like, okay, well, no one's napping here. Do we just give this up? So I think that's just kind of what we did with my oldest. Yeah. We just kind of gave it up. But my youngest, it made me think of a funny story. So he transitioned from daycare that had a nap during the day to preschool. And so I bring him to this new preschool. And then the first day I pick him up and I asked the teacher, at the door, like, hey, how did it go? And she goes, it went great. She said, but he was really funny because he came up to me at one point in the day and he said, hey, are you going to let me, what did he tell her? He said, hey, are you going to let me get some sleep? And so she said, did he have naps at his home? I was like, yeah. And to know him, you'll know he's a character. And so he's actually the one at the end of the podcast. If you all ever hear that little kid at the end who says, that's it, I'm out of here. That's him. And that's so, him. And that was not rehearsed. That was just an accidental recording because he's a character like that. But he was the one who still was like, I need to take a nap. And I can tell when he's starting to get like really whiny and things like he's sleepy. And before I know it, I'll turn around and he's completely asleep. I'm like, do we have to whine? Could you just go to sleep if you know you're tired? If we could just kind of
Yes. I love that because he's listening to his body.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about with my toddler and elementary school families. When I work with an older kid, like usually over 4 or 5 years old, I ask for the child to be part of the conversation and we talk about their body. What's your body telling you? Is your body hungry? Does your body have to go to the bathroom? Does your body feel sleepy? How can you tell if you feel sleepy? What do you feel like in your shoulders and your tummy and your head when you feel sleepy? And it teaches them to be in control of that situation. Like I say, kids don't have a lot of control. We as grownups tell them when you got to go to school and what you get to eat for lunch and when it's time to go to bed and when to turn the TV off. So if they have control over some of that, I'm tired, I want to go to bed, I feel like my body is telling me these things, and I feel comfortable in my bed. I know what to do. I don't need anybody to come and lay down with me. I don't need anything to happen. I don't need you to rub my back. I don't need to have 750 stuffed animals in my bed. I know exactly what to do. And they just kind of go, I got this. I'm good.
I wish there was more integration of healthy sleep or sleep hygiene in our K through 12 system. And I know it's like, another recommendation for K through 12. Because everyone has one. But, I'm in the higher ed space, so I'm working with adults. It's a bit different, but it would be great if kids aren't. It's just, again, sleep is so important when we're talking about health and everything else. But yet we're not really educated much on it. Like you said, there's not enough sleep pressure built up. And I'm like, oh, wow. I never thought about it that way. We just came off summer, and I promise my kids never had enough sleep pressure built up, apparently, because they never wanted to go to sleep. But it would be nice to know, like, for children, I can just imagine if you're starting at kindergarten, like, hey, how does your body feel? Like you said, are you feeling tired? It's fine to just lay down. Like, it's not, it's not punishment. We all need rest at some point. But I would love to see that just in the future as we continue to revolutionize education. Just getting a little bit of information about that would be very helpful, I think.
Well, I think you're so right, because we talk so much about food. They're constantly talking about food in the cafeteria and what the kids can and can't eat and what snacks you can bring in for birthdays and gluten-free and dairy-free, because it's allergies, and it feels like a really, really important discussion. And it is an important discussion. But sleep is so important for ADD, ADHD, kids with autism, kids with anxiety, kids with OCD and depression, teenage athletes. It is crucial. Sleep is when the brain heals. It's when the brain processes. And if these kids who have dyslexia or any kind of learning disability or any kind of 504 plan, one of my children has a 504 plan, and we talk about sleep all of the time, because that is when their brain and body is going to recover from the things they've done during the day. We talk about behavior at school. If your child is having trouble behaving in school, how much sleep are they getting? Are they able to sleep well? If they go to bed at 9:30 and then get up to come find you at midnight, and then get up to come find you at 3:00, and then they're climbing in your bed at 4, and then everybody's just kind of tossing and turning until we call it at 6:00 in the morning, that's not restorative sleep for anybody. We've lost REM cycles. We've lost deep restorative sleep cycles. And I always tell parents, if you're tired, your kid's probably tired too.
I love that you said sleep is when the brain heals. I made myself a little note, because I just love that. It's absolutely true, and we don't think about it. And it got me to thinking, I know we're going to jump into your teen sleep in a little bit, but culturally, I don't know if you've recognized this, but it's been a push, like, oh, you don't need to sleep, get as much done as it's like we throw sleep to the wayside, and it's kind of like sleep almost as a weakness, like, oh, you need to sleep. You'll sleep.
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Exactly. And so it's like culturally, we don't think about it because it's like, oh, little cute phrases, like I'm getting all this stuff done. But man, are you hurting yourself if we're thinking sleep is when the brain heals? When is your brain healing? When are you going to be at your best? If you're not appropriately resting. So I love that you said that. So we're still on toddlers, because I do want to ask you this question. I want to make sure I didn't forget. You mentioned it about your child. I definitely dealt with it with mine. You take them out of the crib and they will not stop leaving the room. Help. What do you do? What do you do?
Yeah. So it's boundaries. It's a boundary thing. So
Okay.
if our family boundary is that once you go to bed, you don't come out again unless it's a life-threatening emergency, then that's the family boundary. And there always has to be a consequence. So I really like to use a reward chart for toddlers. There's some parents have trouble because they don't like the carrot reward, they want it to be an intrinsic thing. And what I've noticed is that if you can give them an extrinsic motivator to get started, the intrinsic motivation follows pretty quickly because it feels good. So we get started with a reward chart and we set the boundary very, very clearly. I need you to make the choice to stay in your bed. Kids who make the choice to stay in their bed get to have a reward in the morning. I also always recommend that families use an okay to wake clock or a hatch light that turns red when they go to sleep and turns green when they wake up. So you can set an alarm to tell the clock. And I like it to turn red when you're getting ready for bed. So we're going to brush our teeth. The clock's red, jammies. We're reading our stories, lights out. Love ya. The red light has been scientifically proven to not interfere with melatonin production. And so even though, I always have it on the lowest setting, when the clock is red, it's time for sleep. Red means bed, going to bed. When the clock turns green, it's morning. It's time for you to wake up. Because most kids don't know truly how to tell time until first or second grade. And so they have no idea what time it is. Who's to say? Especially now that the daylight savings is coming up. They have no clue what time it is. It's 3:00 in the morning. They're like, it's morning. Absolutely. Happy to see you. And we're like, no, the clock is red. It's not morning. And that helps them quantify time. So once you establish this boundary and you talk to them about what the expectation is that you stay in your bed until your clock is green. And when people who make that choice get to have this reward. And so on the days, it almost never works for the first few days because they don't get it. Like, what do you want from me here? So there has to be a consequence. In the morning, when they wake up and the clock is red and they come in your room, you're going to ask, what color is your clock? That's red. Oh, your clock is red. So you chose to get out of bed even though the clock is red. Okay. That means you can't have your sticker this morning. I'm really excited for you to try again tonight. Okay.
Bro. I'm going to watch this again and say, let me make sure I play this conversation.
Yeah. Because they want, and I always throw it, it's kids who make this choice. This is your choice. You are in charge of this. Yeah. If you choose to stay in your bed, then these are the consequences, man. It's awesome. If you choose to get out of your bed, these are the consequences. And you have the opportunity to try again tomorrow. It's okay. We'll make it. But the boundary has to stay there.
For sure.
This is our family boundary. This is where it is.
Got it. That's really good. So on vacation time, is it okay to kind of throw that to the wind at vacation and then we come back and you get back into the swing of things? Or is it important that you're still pack your clock up with you? Because
I always take the clock on vacation.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I take the clock on vacation. We take our favorite lovey. The thing that I tell families when they go on vacation, enjoy yourself. You're on vacation. Don't kill yourself over it. But your life will be easier if your child is getting some sleep. So you may have to sacrifice a couple things. Otherwise, your vacation is not going to be as fun. Truly, it's just not. So if your kid is still napping during the day, if they're napping more than once, I recommend to at least try to get them one nap in a bed. Not in the car or in the stroller. At least one nap in a bed if you can. Otherwise, napping on the go, just do it. If bedtime needs to be a little bit later because we went to a show or we went and did an activity, it's fine. But take all your stuff. And at bedtime, do a bedtime routine. It helps your child wind down. I would have such a hard time going to sleep if somebody was like, you can't wash your face, you can't brush your teeth, you can't read your book for 5 minutes before you go to bed. I just need you to go in here and fall asleep right now. I'd be like, are you crazy? I can't do that. It's too much, right? So kids need wind down time. So even if you don't want to read 3 stories and you don't want to have a bath and you don't have, because now it's 9:30 and you got to go to bed, Just still turn your white noise machine on, put their jammies on, brush their teeth, read one story, lay them down, let them just chill for a sec. So I like families to keep things in place on vacation, but also we can be reasonable human beings. And if things go totally out the window, it's fine. When you get home, just recognize you're going to have a rough couple days. Those are the choices we made. Get back on track. You'll be fine.
Got it. And I'm glad you said that. It's because we don't often think about it from the child's perspective. Like if someone just threw you in your room, like go to bed, it would be difficult. So I do completely understand that. Like the child needs the same wind down time as well. All right. So let's jump over to these teens because you said you help with teen sleep. So like, tell me about this because initially you'll think like, well, I'm not making my teen take naps. So how are you helping families in this area?
So my son is a teenage athlete. He runs on the high school cross country team. And last year was his freshman year. And I went to the beginning. And my kids have always played sports. Like my oldest daughter was on the junior high volleyball team. Like we do soccer, we do the things. But this is the first time one of my kids has like played in high school. So we go to the team meeting with the coach and he's like talking to the boys. And he says, boys, this is your nutrition plan. And he pulled up this whole thing and he was like, this is your calorie input and output. And this is how much water you need to be drinking. He went through this whole nutrition plan. And then he said, and I also want to make sure you're getting a lot of sleep. Your bodies need sleep. You need at least 8 hours. And that was it. Get 8 hours of sleep. And all the parents were like, there's no way my kid's going to get 8 hours of sleep. And I was like, what? These children are 14 years old. And they're running 8 miles a day. And you're telling me that they're not going to get 8 hours of sleep? What's going to happen to their poor body?
Yeah.
My son, he goes to bed at 9:30 because he gets up at 5:30 in the morning to go to Bible study before school and then goes to practice at 6:30 a.m. to run his 5 miles. So we have structured it so that he goes to sleep earlier. And the whole argument here is that science says that teenage brains produce melatonin later. So teenagers don't want to fall asleep until 10 or 11 p.m. and they want to sleep until 9 a.m. Most public schools start at between 7 and 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And so it is contradictory to teenage development. If your teenager is tired enough, they'll fall asleep. The number one thing that I have seen with teenagers and sleep deprivation is screens. It's cell phones. Right. So when I work with a teen family, the first thing we do is set boundaries around the phone. Mm-hmm. I have rules about no phones in bedrooms, and we have a family charging station in our kitchen. All phones are charged downstairs in the kitchen. No phones are allowed upstairs. My kids can't even take them up, let alone keep them in their rooms overnight. And because these kids they're addicted to them. Like we all are. I'm 100% addicted to my phone. I check it. It's beeping. With the phantom vibration, right? And I am a grown woman who didn't grow up with a cell phone. And I'm still glued to this thing. These teenagers who do not have fully developed prefrontal cortex are checking their phones constantly. Social media, the dopamine hits, the YouTube addictions, the gaming addictions, get it out of their bedroom. Get it out. They don't need it. They can't sleep. They're on their phone. They have no self-control. So we talk about pulling the phone out of the room. We also talk about no screens 30 minutes before bedtime. I do the same thing with my toddler families. No screens 30 minutes before bedtime. Get the blue light out of your brain. Let your body start producing melatonin naturally. Because if we are being stimulated visually by lights and games and this constant input, it's going to be harder to fall asleep.
For sure. Man, those screens, it seems like there's just so much research that's starting to develop. It's like initially it was introduced as like, oh, this is going to be a lifesaver, all these great things. And I'm not knocking technology. I mean, here I am on a platform provided by technology. But we went to a parenting conference. It was a couple weeks ago. And there was a session on technology in your home. And there was just so much information provided on like the behavior that we see in our children and a result of how much time they're spending in front of the screen, and just how to create, a healthy amount of screen time for your kids. And it also made me think too, when you were talking about your son with cross country and the start of school time. I don't know if you've heard this, but there's actually been some pushback about having public schools start later because of the time needed for children to sleep. So maybe there's some nice new implementation based on what we know now about sleeping. Um, so I'll ask you this because I don't want to hold you here forever like this is your full-time job. What is your recommendation for bedtimes? Like what's your take on bedtimes? Do we need to have like a strong and fast time, like we go to bed at 7:30, or do we just kind of see when the sleep pressure builds? What do you say from your perspective we need to do with bedtimes and kids?
That's a really good question. From my experience, and the science says that a set schedule is generally easier on kids over 6 months old because it helps us set our circadian rhythm. The body just kind of gets used to it. So for children who are toddler and through elementary school age, I like between 7 and 8 p.m. I think that's a really nice bedtime between 7 and 8 p.m. Some families struggle with an earlier bedtime because mom and dad don't get off work till 6. They pick up kid from daycare at 6:30. They get home. They have to have dinner. Nobody can get to bed by 7. But if we can shoot for 8 p.m., we will still be within the child's natural window. Little kids' brains just want to go to bed. Their bodies need more sleep. And so if we can get to bed by 8 or so, it's better for your child. We're not working into the overtired zone. With our bodies, if we push past, have you ever been so tired you couldn't sleep?
Yeah.
Like you get to a point where you're just so overstimulated.
Exactly.
That you lay down and your body is tired, but your brain won't shut off. That's the cortisol in your brain had to kick in to keep you up. It's like, I guess we're not going to sleep. Okay, I'm gonna help you out and keep you awake. Children have the same problem. So if we miss that window and they move into an overtired zone, this is when you start to see hyperactivity, kind of manic behavior. They're really, really happy and jumping around and playing. And then all of a sudden we're crying because we don't have ice cream. And it's just, and that your kid's too tired. It's time to go to bed, right? We missed the window a little bit. And it happens. So I like to see 7 to 8 o'clock for really young kids. My 12-year-old is in 7th grade. She goes to bed at 8:45. She goes up and she reads in her bed for 15 or 20 minutes. We usually lights out between 9 and 9:15, and she gets up for school about 7:15.
Mm-hmm.
And then my older kids, my son goes to bed at 9:30, and even my daughter, who's almost 18, I tell her by 10:30, I'm like, you've got to go. You've got to go upstairs. She leaves her phone downstairs, and I'm like, I don't care what you do up there. Just go upstairs. And she usually just goes to bed. She's tired. She reads her book for a while, maybe does a little bit of homework, goes to bed. Yeah. I don't think there's any reason for these children to be awake until midnight. I hear kids talking a lot about homework loads, and, I've seen some of that in my children, but if we as parents can help them manage their time and be effective workers, I think that we need to prioritize sleep in a way that we're not.
Stephanie, this has been great. I feel like I've learned a ton of new stuff, and just, I don't know, it's just a lot to think about. But it's very helpful when you think about, hey, how am I going to help manage these kids? Because it's a lot. So for parents, how can they find you? How can they get in contact with you to talk about some of these wonderful resources that you offer?
So I have a website. It's riseandrestcoaching.com. I'm also on Instagram as a Rise and Rest Sleep Coach, and I have a Facebook page, Rise and Rest Parent Coaching. So yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. Google, I think Google likes me, so you can Google me, and so, and all my resources are on my website. I have a lot of free resources around sleep, especially for infants and toddlers, that anyone is welcome to. I offer free sleep assessments, free parenting assessments. So I believe the information should be accessible to everyone. So if you just have questions, I'm happy to chat with you for a few minutes. And all pricing and packages, it's all laid out on my website so you can take a look at it and see if it's a good fit for your family.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. We do end every episode with this question. So we want to ask you, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received that you can pass along to our listeners?
I think the best piece of advice that I've ever received was set your boundary and preserve the relationship. I've had to learn in parenting my kids that, like, we always say, oh, kids are so different, but like they really are. They're so different. And the things that I've had to learn for my oldest daughter, I've had to do completely different things for my son.
Yeah.
And he needs me in a different way. And I interact with him in a different way. We have family boundaries. We have family rules. My husband and I come at this as a team.
Yeah.
But I also want to preserve the relationship with my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want them to reach their potential. But at the end of the day, I want them to want to talk to me.
Yeah.
I don't want straight A's to be the reason that they don't share their problems with me anymore. And so I think that's become my parenting mantra. Hold your boundary to keep them safe and preserve the relationship, meet them where they're at.
I love that. That's so important. And that's real advice. You want them to want to talk to you later on. Andy Stanley says, we're raising kids that want to be around us when they no longer have to. And I love that. So kind of intertwines all together. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much again for being here and
thank you. This was great.
Oh, good. All this wonderful information that we need. I will include in the notes, everyone, Stephanie's website and her social media handle. So make sure you visit the website, check out her resources. Don't just go along not getting any sleep any longer. You have some resources here. And then we're going to make sure that we follow her on social media so we can get some more sleep tips that I'm sure we all need. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, take care.
Then that's it. I'm out of here.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the HeyHannah Podcast. We hope that you found inspiration, insight, and encouragement in our conversation today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay connected with us, be sure to like, subscribe, and review the HeyHannah Podcast. Your feedback helps us reach more people and spread our message of love and wisdom. You can also follow us on social media at HeyHannah Podcast. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to stay updated on all the latest episodes, behind-the-scenes exclusives, and engaging content. And for those of you who prefer the visual experience, catch the video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Just search HeyHannah Podcast and hit that subscribe button to never miss an episode. For even more HeyHannah goodness, visit our website at www.heyhannahpodcast.com. There you'll find updates, bonus content, and join a community that embraces you with open arms. Your continued support truly means the world to us. Together, let's spread love, share wisdom, and honor every precious moment. Because here at HeyHannah, we believe that life is meant to be lived well. Remember, a new episode of the HeyHannah Podcast is released every Wednesday, so mark your calendars and be sure to tune in. Thank you again for being a part of Hannah's Hive. Until next time, take care.
entertainment.